Tato, con los Andes toku te manga, con Magdalena toku te agua, no Colombia ao, con Sandra toku ina, na mihi nui kia koto katoa. Thanks for the opportunity to share a general overview, and I'm going to say a general overview because this is a very complex topic, of some of the projects that I'm involved in EnviroStrat. Some of the DOG's members, like some of the workers from DOG, are familiar with some of the material that I'm going to present. We did a workshop a couple of weeks ago to do a round to see if the rationale is making sense. So DOG had this question of how could we create a tool or a methodology that could help to identify, describe, and quantify benefits of a marine protected area in New Zealand. And they commissioned EnviroStrat and Tataki Limited. So what we have been thinking is to create a methodology or a toolkit. In this case, we decided to call it toolkit because at the end, what we are bringing is different methodologies into one place in order to bring good questions to guide people or stakeholders to perform a benefit assessment. So before going further, I just want to bring a little background of marine protected areas in New Zealand. And basically, 0.5% of the New Zealand exclusive zone is under any of the two types of protections. Type number 1 is marine reserve or non-take reserves, and type number 2 is any of the others like Maitai reserves, Rahui, Tapui, cable exclusion, etc. So why do we value MPAs in order to increase the area that we are protecting? And that's where this tool is coming from. Before going again there, I just want to come back to what do we mean by benefits, because benefits is kind of a broad concept. And here we are talking about a positive outcome from society that results from establishing an MPA. And by establishing could be either a new or an already established MPA. And I want to emphasize society because, as Drew mentioned, he was describing the ecosystem part, but here we are talking about humans. So how human perceive and how human value. And when we are talking about or some considerations for benefits, basically benefits are defined from a set of values or worldviews. Also, benefits arise from a fulfillment of people's needs. And it varies by stakeholders and cannot be easily generalized. Basically, what some values vary depending who you are talking with, but some benefits as well could be a negative perception from others. So it's also a trade-off there. Place matters and matters a lot. So depending on where you are talking about, the benefits could be different. And benefits can be something sometimes observed through market transaction, and it comes with one of the questions that someone asked before. And here the question as well is, are prices enough signal to actually measure what a benefit is? I just left the question there. And I want to share this quote with the aim to highlight the relationship between benefits and a variety of ecological and socioeconomic characteristics. I don't want to concentrate that much because Drew already described this a lot. So what I want to do is move into the second part. So we have the marine ecosystems that are moving through an ecological production, and then we have the marine ecosystem services that in this case we are going to describe it in provisional services, regulatory services, cultural and amenity services, and supporting services. And these ecosystem services could be through a direct or indirect process that translate into a benefit that are basically associated with the human well-being. Indirectly, we could also observe it through products, goods, or services. So this is a graph to trying to show an example of how we can see benefits within a marine protected area. So imagine that the green line is whatever that is inside the green line is a marine protected area. And of course, we have a series of benefits inside, but we also can observe benefits from outside, like we could call it spillovers, or we can also see it from not only in the actual marine protected area, we can see it through the land, like for example, cities or small towns that are nearby. And I also want to bring something here that is super important in this methodology or in this toolkit, is that it's not only around ecosystem services, is the concept of that all the values that Mautauranga Māori can bring into the analysis. However, I don't want to go deep in this because there's two considerations. So the first one is a benefit assessment should not cover Mautauranga Māori if there's not engagement with local iwi and hapu. Basically, what I mean by this is that it's iwi and hapu who guide how Mautauranga Māori should be included in this type of analysis. And the second one is the use of local resources, could be the ecosystem, fisheries, generate local benefits. So definitely it's important to know what's going on in the area. So the toolkit that we suggest is a stepwise approach. It has 5 general steps. So basically the first one is, tell me what is the idea? Why do you want to do this? The second one is, what do you want to measure? The third one is, how can you measure it? And then, so what? Basically, what do you want to do with the results? So in step 1, that is agreeing the purpose, we have a couple of questions here. I just want to show the general questions that are guiding through the process. So basically here is why is the assessment being conducted or is needed? Or who are you aiming to influence or inform? Or who are the stakeholders? And step 2, that we have is scoping and planning. Here, things become a little bit more interesting because it's more thinking, okay, you already decide why do you want to do this? So tell us, what do you want to assess or what do you want to measure? And here the first is build a shared understanding of the role of Mautauranga Māori. What do we understand by benefits? And ecosystem services, how they connect with ecosystem services, and the capacity and capability available for conducting this type of benefit assessment. Then we have a step 2, that is identify the benefits and in a specific geography or the area that could be local, regional, national, or global. It depends on the scope of the project or the benefit assessment. In step 3C, the idea is to connect benefits to ecosystem services and beneficiaries. And this is super important for what, as I mentioned before. And finally is prioritizing which ecosystem services and benefits want to be or want to move forward. Then in the next step, we start thinking about analyze trends, drivers that could influence the priority ecosystem services. The second step of step number 3 will be select valuation or any of the methods. And here it depends on the type of data that exists or if data needs to be collected, how to define indicators of if those indicators are new or needs to be collected. And of course, the type of methods. And here we are moving into the total economic value where we have non-use and use values and some of the methodologies that came mainly from the economic field. But of course, we want to include other ones because I forgot to mention something very important is that not all the benefits can be quantified. Some benefits could be qualified. And it's important to consider those qualitative tools or methodologies as well. So let me give an example to all this theory. And let's use a very simple one that is MPAs and recreation and tourism as a benefit. So the marine ecosystem service associated with that broadly is called cultural and amenity services. And we have 2 in the list of ecosystem services that we have put together. So one is recreation, leisure, and tourism. And the second one is aesthetic information. In terms of the benefits, people could say feeling of relaxation, pleasure, and enjoyment, or for example, like cultural heritage and identity. And then when we move into the evaluation part, we can start saying, okay, so could be revenues from wildlife watching tourism, just think about Calcutta, or enjoyment of being in or near of an MPA captured via price, the property prices. So that's when you go into a more sophisticated tools and economic tools like hedonic prices, or sense of belonging captured through stories from local people. So there are different ways of measuring. So the first one is a monetary option, the second one is a quantitative option, and the third one is a qualitative option. And the final step is use and communicate results. It's basically how to use the results that you got from the benefit assessment, and then start making questions. So who is the target audience? So what type of information and evidence could help to inform other decisions? Or how will these benefits be communicated to different beneficiaries? What type of channels we have? And here, transparency is very important. So I have this latest one just to put a little bit of context of how MPA connect with Blue Economy. So we have the big circle would be the integrated coastal management plans, basically all the framework for policy, governance and regulatory solutions. Then we have the marine spatial planning or the integrated coastal zone management, and that's where we have the protection of coastal and marine areas. And there's where MPAs plays a role. And finally, we have the Blue Economy. But at the same time, we could say, this is a question that I have, is like, in what point of restoration projects becomes a restorative economy? And therefore, in what point a marine protected area could become a restorative economy? So just to finalize, healthy coastal and marine ecosystems are essential to protect habitats and treasure wildlife, keep the climate in balance, maintain food security, support economic development, and of course, recognizing the benefits from these ecosystem services should help to increase the marine and coastal protection. So that's what's next. We are working on the writing document, the super exciting part of any research. And we are aiming also to test this tool with other stakeholders in order to see the flow, because the idea is to make sure that the rationale that we have behind each of the steps makes sense. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandra.